Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Nontraditional Nurse Podcast. So, today we're talking about a non-traditional path that's really about bridging the gap between patients and the healthcare system. And I'm excited because it's a role that I really didn't know about until pretty recently for nurses. So, today we have Lori here to talk about the role of a patient advocate. So, thanks for joining us, Lori.
Oh, thank you for having me.
And Lori's worked in many different nursing roles from bedside to home health, occupational health, workers' comp, advocacy. So today we're going to hear all about her journey and patient advocacy and how she kind of came into that role. So, Lori, can you kind of trace your journey back from bedside nursing to becoming a patient advocate? And if there was any defining moment that really triggered that interest for you?
I would so starting at the bedside, I did the traditional route. I actually was a diploma nurse, so I was very comfortable in the hospital setting, and that's all I really knew. That's what we were trained to do. But I kind of started out being a non-traditional nurse soon after because I had four children in succession, and my husband is a firefighter, and so I had to figure out a way to bring in an income and also um, to make it work for my family. And so I started my career where many nurses end up even nowadays in trying to juggle it all because it's really hard. And so I went initially like at the bedside, was an orthopedics trauma step down nurse. So there is a thread that goes through my career in orthopedics. It's I loved it, and that's why I started there. But it seems to be popping up in every job I have. So from there, my first pivot was to home health when I did some float pool within the hospital and learned other units, which is very typical. A lot of nurses do that. They get frustrated in one area. They don't leave usually the facility, but they try to move around to find a better fit when they're not comfortable or not happy. That's pretty traditional, and I did start that way. Then I went to home health. I went PRN and I did evening shift. And I got to know my supervisor very well. She knew what I was doing at home, and I was very adamant about what I could and couldn't do. And so we came up with this role for me that I would do all the wound care in the evenings. And when my husband was at a shift for 24 hours, I wouldn't work that night. But any other time, I just did wound care. So I'd go in and do the dressings, document, and come home. Worked great. Worked great with family. Um, did that for a while, and the home health agency called me up. And this is such a long story that I can't even tell you exactly because it would take you 2 hours to tell you how each job stacked on the next. And that's what I did throughout my career. And that's why I'm so excited about finding patient advocacy. Like it's just like the epitome of all these stacks. And that's why I'm excited to share about this job because any nurse can do this. But anyway, so I went from home health, ended up getting a job from home health in a factory, a manufacturing facility, because the facility called the home health agency and said, we have a contract to have a nurse in this factory. They have to be on. It's in the union contract to be on site. Can you send a nurse over? So they called me, and I'm like, well, what do I got to do? And they said, I don't know, just put band-aids on. I think that's all you have to do if they get something hurt in the factory. I'm like, so this is kind of, I'm trying to say, this is the kind of mentality nurses that are listening out there need to know. This is what you have to do. And I said, okay, I'll try it. And so one thing led to another. I loved it so much that I got hired by them full time. I developed a whole new occupational health program, hired a medical director, uh, redid the clinic itself, like from the floors up, designed it, got involved in workers' comp because I, of course, was handling the injuries and had to learn all about how to handle a work-related injury from the insurance side. Um, and I also got involved in a lot of union contracts and negotiations with the workers in the C-suite because the workers trusted me as a nurse. And that's another thing that has resonated with me throughout my career is that people trust you as a nurse. And they did. And so I could sit at the bargaining table and both sides trusted me, and so it was very fulfilling. I learned so many things. And but I stayed there until the plant closed. And when the plant closed after 150 years in our little community, I'm like, what am I going to do next? So I used to work for the insurance adjuster that was assigned to my manufacturing facility that I worked with all the time because I had to submit reports of injury and do OSHA logs and a whole bunch of other things. She said, Lori, you deal with workers'
Sure.
comp case managers all the time. You know, they come to the factory. You work with them to get patients back to work. Why don't you do that? And I'm like, oh, okay. How do I do that? You know, and they're like, you know, you. And so I ended up. I never had any experience, but I had the translatable skills from being an occupational health nurse and learning all about workers' comp, even though I wasn't a case manager. So I applied. The company took, looking at all my skills, took a chance on me. And they trained me to become a case manager in workers' comp. And that was the beginning of a long, 15 years of dealing. I went from that company to another one and then stayed with that company for a long time. But within that role, um, I, I don't, again, the owner of the company saw something in me that I didn't see in me and started having me going out and doing presentations about workers' comp to and going to vendor events and becoming a voice for the case management company. I developed new innovative programs. She let me do that. I began helping her with setting up when she got a new a job that she was working on. She pulled me into doing hiring and interviewing, all these things that I never did. And she's like, I think you can do this. I said, well, you got to tell me how to do it, show me how to do it. And I guess I can do it. From there, I did that till I retired at the end of my career in March of 2022. So I went through COVID doing a remote job. I was in reviewing nurses' charts across the country for quality and workers' comp. But I was done. There was some frustrating things, and like a lot of nurses, start feeling disempowered. And I'm like, well, I'm 62. I probably can, but I really wasn't ready. But I didn't know what I wanted to do next. So I'm like, all right, I'm done. But I wasn't done. And this is another message for nurses out there. I wasn't done. I felt like but I needed to do something, but I didn't know what. And I started calling people, and I started calling a good friend of mine who was in HR because I knew she had a lot of connections and a lot of knowledge. And I said, do you have any recommendations? You know me well. What would you suggest? And she said, well, I think you'd make a wonderful patient advocate. And I'm like, in the hospital? No, no, that's not the kind of patient advocacy I want to do, because that's the same. Your allegiance still isn't to the patient. Your allegiance is to the insurance companies and the hospital. And she goes, no, no, no. There's this new thing called independent patient advocates. And you actually can start a business doing it. Well, I've never started a business. I don't even like math. So, that was again, I'm like, I just had the right mentors throughout my career to like say, you can do this. And so this is long story to get you because I want other nurses to know that you do have the translatable skills to take this job, that this is a job that you already are doing every day in your life as a nurse. But I didn't know the business side of it and how that all works. So I just started learning about what this all was. I joined my Florida network. I reached out to mentors that I knew were out there in the field, and here I am. 3 years later, I developed Stepping Stone Advocacy Services, and I have nurses in several states that I personally that have reached out to me. A lot of them because they've heard about me and want to do this too. And I'm taking a chance on them, like other nurses over my career have taken a chance on me, and that's my goal. And that's why I do what I do.
That's wonderful. And I think, yeah, it is so powerful to realize, when you're willing to try something, it might not look exactly as you planned, but a lot of times, one door opens and then 5 more open after that. So when you're
Yeah.
willing to take that step, it makes such a difference.
Yes, it really does.
Um, yeah. And if you had to kind of just tell us, define the role of a patient advocate, like
Mhm.
what type of services that's provided or what a typical day or case might look like.
Sure. So I as you know, just like every patient in the hospital presents with a different challenges, and they bring with them, their past and their circumstances, and the same is in advocacy work, because every patient that we bring on that we're trying to help is so unique. But in the role of an independent patient advocate, you don't have to be a nurse. I'm gonna just kind of start there. But for me and what I'm building, um, my practice is building with nurses that want to do this, and so I want to
Sure.
make sure that I clarify with that you do not have to be a nurse, but
Okay.
we make the best. We make the best advocates, and there's not that other people can't do it, but I'm a little partial. Plus, like, I know what they know as a nurse. I know what their training
Sure.
is. So I'm not coming with somebody straight off the street. So just to say that. So the role of an independent patient advocate is to help to navigate the healthcare system and help to fill the gaps in care, as you were saying. And so we do this. We're much more than a navigator. We're much more than a case manager. We're much more than a social worker. We're kind of a fluid combination of all these things.
Okay.
And so what we do is, um, when we I can kind of walk you through kind of a scenario of what we do, because it really changes. We do a lot of services, like we have like a kind of list of kind of things we do, like we help in transitions of care, between facilities or between physicians, or changing doctors when there's frustration involved, or you know we get a call. Oftentimes they may be in the ICU and they've got a really serious illness, and the patients and the families, they're so frightened and they're not getting the right answers, and they don't know who to go to, because you're not the the discharge planner, the case manager. That's not their role in there, to hold your hand and to really understand, and also to have the knowledge that we do as patient advocates. And so that's one of the things we do in
Yeah.
helping to navigate, is on the hospital side. But we also do a lot after the transitions, because we're trying to keep patients in their homes or in the setting that's best for them. And so we're already working past the hospital. Like, unlike a nurse in the hospital or case manager, we're working past that. We're holding the family's hand, the patient's hand through that transition. We're not saying, see you later, here's the home health nurse that's coming in. This is what you need to do. Bye. Because what I found, and I've done the home health side too, so this is very helpful as well, is what I found is services get dropped, and families, equipment doesn't arrive. And once you leave the hospital, your charts is closed out. Who do you call? You can't call the nurse that you talked to 3 hours ago, because she's off shift now. Like, that's who you had your connection with, and the chart's gone, social worker's gone. And so we are that connection, because we were part of the process of the planning, but we're all still continuing with the patient. So this is just an example, just one example. We get so many different healthcare problems. So many people call us in crisis. And the reason we get referrals, it's usually the family. And it usually is when they're in that crisis, they're frustrated. They don't know which way to turn. They're discouraged by what's happening. They feel guilt too. Sometimes we get calls from patients that are in the home. Here in Florida, there's a lot of elderly moved down to Florida in their 50s to have fun in the sun, away from family, right? And
Sure.
they move down here, and they start to age without family around, because the family's still up north.
Yep.
And we get calls from family members all the time saying, my mom just fell for the third time. I can't be there. I don't understand what can we do? I want to try to keep her in her home. So we become the eyes and ears for family. We go to doctor's appointments to help make sure that their voice is heard as a patient, and that the family is kept in the loop. We help, you know, figure out, bring in resources, network a lot to make sure we bring in the best resources. And I say now, we just started, just launched a pediatric advocacy program as well. Um, and our new saying is that we help navigate the healthcare system from birth to 105 and beyond now, because I felt there was such a need and there was so much more out there. I don't have a background in pediatrics, but I have 4 children. I'm a parent. I understand. And so it's just not about the nursing. Yes, I hired some pediatric nurses to help me because I'm doing a neurodivergent part, support of neurodivergent children, kids that are on the spectrum. And that's near and dear to me because I have a personal experience with it. And so even that, having that personal experience to be an advocate is so important because you genuinely understand, and patients know that. And I could talk all day because, as you can tell, I'm so enthusiastic about the ability to provide this and do it in my way that you never get to do. So,
And really, nurses, we're called to do this for our family all the time. My grandparents, I have their my charts. I go to their visits with them because I am that nurse in the family. But so many people don't have that luxury, and it is such a gift. And yeah, I can just tell how passionate you are, and
yeah.
really to be able to, treat these people as your own family, you know, give them the care that they would receive if they did have that nurse in their family that cared so much. It's really, really
It's
special. So thank you.
Thank you. And just one little caveat to just share even more, like the power of
Hmm.
patient advocacy. I too advocate for my mom. She's down here in Florida with me. She's had about 6 months of really difficult time, cardiac issues. And in fact, I had to, in the middle of one of her crises, had to pull her out of the hospital, put her in another hospital, and hire a whole new
Wow.
team around her. She ended up with a pacemaker, a cardiac ablation, um, just you name it, and a cardiac cath with a stent, all stemming from things that should have happened. But that's part of what I do as an advocate, and because I have the nursing background to do that, and she's doing much, much better. Long story short, I get a call from her doctor that I had changed it to, and they have a device clinic, like that they follow up, with all her devices and everything now. And the doctor that I had switched her to for the ablation, and also for the insertion of the pacemaker was no longer part of that group. And so the cardiologist, I had to like think about my mom, and I could either keep my cardiologist now that I liked and move to another doctor that would put the pacemaker in 2 different practices, or think about what is best for my mom and how can she remain as independent as possible to manage her own care as long as possible. So what we decided to do was, move the one doctor in with her, the overall captain of the ship, so to speak, the main cardiologist, moved to that. And I thought it was full circle for me because I got a call from him this morning on his personal phone cell. And he said, I understand you're a nurse. And I said, yeah, because I hadn't really talked to him. Like I was behind the scenes trying to get all this done. And and he explained the situation about the one doctor leaving. And he said to me, after all was said, he said, tell me more about what you're doing as a nurse. And I said, well, actually, I'm a patient advocate and I do this for lots of patients, just like my mom. And he said, this is amazing. And
Yeah.
I was like, okay, I get this. It is amazing. And I'm very proud that nurses can do this. So that's my story.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mhm.
And if you were talking to a bedside nurse that was interested in advocacy, did they need a training, certification? Is there anything like mandatory, or what would be their next steps?
Yes, there's training out there. I offer a course too on patient advocacy and some mentoring and coaching. There's a preceptorship course that I offer up on AFA, the Alliance of Professional Health Advocates, as well. But you do not have to be a nurse, like I said, and you do not have to be certified. A lot of what the patient advocates that are not in the healthcare profession, they do get the certification because it gives a layer of credibility to them to be able to be patient
Okay,
advocates.
sure.
But I'm not certified. I can do what I do with the value that I already carry as a certified case manager and as an RN. That
Yeah.
I don't need it personally.
Yeah.
I don't require it of my nurses. It's certainly an option. Some people want to do that or take that next step, but it's not required.
We do have so much experience in
Yeah.
navigating this
I
from our
mean,
clinical.
we really do. It really is. I'm not saying it's not important and valuable as a profession to have that kind
Hmm.
of certification and background. And I encourage those that are interested outside of nursing, but we're talking about non-traditional roles for nursing. You just have to start digging and learning and taking your skills and go for it. The one part that I will say was the business side for me was a huge undertaking, as you can imagine.
Yeah.
And it's been a learning curve, but it's also been so empowering to be an entrepreneur. I mean, we're already valued by the consumers, healthcare consumers. We're already valued as nurses. And I think if that keeps being my biggest message out there, that people that follow me, is that you bring, no matter if you've been a nurse for 2 years, 6 months, or 40 years plus like me, there's still a place. And you should feel empowered to be able to do whatever you want.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And then when it comes to, you're kind of touching on the business side of things. So, like logistically, does a nurse usually transition to doing patient advocacy part-time, full-time, on the side? Do they start their own where do people usually begin in this journey?
So it's kind of all over the place. I would say so if you're building your own business, of course, you're gonna have to grow your presence, whether it's on social media, whether it's in your community. You're gonna have to grow your presence. So my recommendation is to start slowly. First, I would do is get with a mentor, get with another patient advocate, me, whoever. I'm always willing to love to talk to other nurses and encourage you and support you in any which way you decide to go. That would be, I would suggest starting with that, seeing if there's a networking group in your state, see, or some more nurses that you can reach out to and learn from. Start slow. Start learning the business side. If you want to work for another, like if you would want to work for me, the nurses have reached out to me, to have an interest, and I'm help them however they need, wherever they are in their journey, to do that. So reach out to a mentor, start learning more and more about it, start networking, learn the business side if you want to go that way. Look at the local chamber, they have got support there to learn the business side. I just asked a lot of questions and went down some rabbit holes, but figured it out. So I would say start part time. Don't leave your don't leave your day job. Start doing this
Okay.
because you can do it part time. You can do it very
Sure.
part
That's
time.
nice and flexible.
Yeah, it's very, very flexible. For me in my quote unquote retirement that I am supposedly in now,
Yeah.
it's wonderful because handle a case. In how I run my business is I try to do as much as I can remotely or telephonically, because I'm a concierge business and the patients or their families pay for it. I try to be a good steward with their money. And so I try to get the most bang for the buck. So most of what you can do, if you set your business up right, you can do remotely, and that's a big win. You can go to the beach.
Yeah.
I was at the beach this summer, and I still have one case that I carry, and I just I'm just available. And what the patients really need and the families really need is a connector for
Hmm.
support, and that's what we do.
Yeah, that's so great. What would you say are some of the biggest challenges when it comes to patient advocacy?
I would think the biggest challenge is I'm a concierge business, so it's private pay. Um, so Medicare is approving. There is a code out now that you can bill out, but they're not really professional patient advocates. They are still constrained by whatever they're going to bill under Medicare. So it begins to be, and I'm not talking because it is a stopgap. It is a way to where I can't help because I do some pro bono work. I give, depending on the situation, but I still have to run a business.
Sure.
And so I understand, and obviously Medicare and the government sees that there's such a problem and a gap that they're like jumping on board to say this patient advocacy thing is a thing, right? So that's an opportunity if you want to set up a business and you want to become a Medicare navigator, is what I would call you. Even though they're calling you patient advocates, it's not the same as what we do as independent patient advocates. But I want nurses to be aware that this is another avenue for you to fill in the gaps like we do. Just not as you're still working for insurance and you're still working towards codes to make things work. So I think that's
Gotcha.
important to understand because they're going to see that out there a lot more.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, and especially if you're starting your own business, you want to understand what that looks like going into it. But hopefully in the future, they continue to see the value in this, and maybe we see that change where there is opportunities that the patient doesn't have to take the entire load of the payment and can still have such a robust service.
Right. I think there's room for both. It's just like direct primary care or concierge physicians, primary
Mhm.
cares. There's a need for that too. There's people that need that and want that
Yeah,
other
no,
layer of
totally.
care. And so
Yep.
there's a market out there. I think you just have to be really savvy and really understand the business and be really aware of where the way things are going. I think it's wonderful that Medicare is on board. I just think for me and my model, what I do as is a little bit different. I don't accept insurance at all, so
Yeah,
that hasn't changed.
absolutely.
Yeah, it hasn't. The only
Yeah.
things that's changed is it's kind of confused the healthcare consumer, and they'll call me up and say, "Well, I understand you take Medicare," and I'm like, no, I don't take Medicare, and and that's important. And I'm transparent.
Yeah,
There's room for all of us.
absolutely. Oh,
Yeah,
yeah, totally. Yeah, it's
yeah,
such a needed service.
yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
and then the how we like to wrap up every interview is, for nurses that are really interested in this path, what would be like your best advice to them for getting started?
My best advice is don't get discouraged if you want to have your own business in this, because I thought when I turned the lights on in January, I'd have calls coming out I'd be picking up the phone and 6 weeks later, not crickets, nothing. And I'm like, oh, did I make a mistake? And I think so I would say this is more of a part time gig um, for people. I think that you can build it over time, slowly, and then transition over to it, and then you can transition away from but you have to be very patient. This is not where you're going to pivot to this career and make $100,000 your first year. You're just not. My model's a little different too. I'm at the end of my career. My mission, as I've said to you, is to advocate for patients, families, patients, and the nurses that serve them. And so that's my mission. So we're all driven in different ways. So that's mine.
Yeah, and thanks for being transparent about that because I think, it is so important everyone has a different risk tolerance and some people
Hmm.
can quit their job and try something new and other
Hmm.
people really need to move slowly with that. So I
Yeah.
appreciate the transparency with
Yeah.
that. And I think, overall, just in looking at patient advocacy, it's like I became a patient for the first time, like having my daughter this last year. And for how hard
Oh,
it is for a healthcare provider to navigate the healthcare system, it's so understandable, how someone not in healthcare, it's like feels impossible to them. So I just
yeah.
think there's so much need for all of this and filling in those gaps when transition to care and everything like that. So thank you so much for telling us all about this and sharing your own story.
Sure. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it was a pleasure. And thanks for listening today. If you want to keep exploring non traditional career paths like this one, make sure to sign up for our free newsletter at the nontraditionalnurse.com. It's packed with interviews, deep dives, and real stories from nurses who have found a better fit. So thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.